How many months or years in advance can you hype stuff up? Board game news! News. What else has happened? Where are things at? What do you need to know? Let's talk. And where do we start this week? Well, I guess the news that I'm predicting, Liege, that Gamefound Feast soon? Yeah, one or two campaigns and updates have alluded to the fact that their potential upcoming projects are going to be talked about in the next Gamefound Feast. And seeing as they do them pretty much quarterly right now, and we did do the summer one and the spring one, which seemingly reminds me that it feels like even half of those projects from all of those already announcements haven't even launched yet at this point. Seems awful odd that you're hyping projects that are still potentially even months and or significantly more than that out further, but you do you, I guess. You gotta drum up money when literally your job is dependent on whether or not I'm willing to throw cash at a screen regardless of how crappy the game is, or whether or not they tell me about the actual gameplay, or if they just show me pictures of all of the pretty renders in the first place, right? Teasing, not teasing at the same time. So one of those campaigns that alluded to that was Skytear folks, saying that Skytear Horde is pretty much done. Onward is being delivered as we speak. And they teased that, well, maybe the next one is going to have maybe a dice component, if I'm reading into this, because they said that, and they crossed it out. Our next game is rolling, crossed out, coming soon. Multiple games from them, they say, though, in 2026. The first in the line, what will be announced, quote-unquote, in the next Gamefound Feast. It will be their first game for ages 10 and up. First lighter take on the Skytear universe. And the first time they will publish with an external designer. From the mind that brought you Super Fantasy Brawl. That's enticing. I am a big fan of their product in the first place, so we will see. And the other, arguably bigger news, if you missed my YouTube short on it from last week, Slay the freaking Spire is coming back. Contention Games threw down and said, what can we do? You want more? You can't handle them apples, but we're giving you them apples anyway in the form of the Downfall expansion, giving us bosses playable as heroes, and heroes playable going up as bosses. Now, the original has 9. Will we see all 9? Holy wish list Batman in that degree. And again, the only question, though, is the deluxifications for that were relatively lackluster. There was an error issue with a bunch of the sleeves, I heard. And I just didn't see a whole lot of incentive to throw down money to get it on crowdfunding. If they change something like that, again, like, I am not against crowdfunding exclusives. I'm against the short time-limited window, but I am not against them in general, especially if you offer them later at a significantly higher price point to get people to crowdfund you, to get people to, again, say it with me, give you a free freaking loan. I should be incentivized to give you a free loan. I am not just handing out money because I have a bunch to throw around that I've decided in this downhill economy doesn't need to be carefully spent elsewhere. Off my soapbox. Okay. Primal. Speaking of big crowdfunding projects, literally and metaphorically, they just said with their latest update that they are going to expand further, as if it needs more expansion. It apparently does. So, new hunters, new combat boards to give you new scenario varieties rather than just that's in the base game as a circular board in the first place, and new layers of difficulty. But the teaser with this was that it might not really be crowdfunded, and it might just go through their web shop, is where they're selling all their previous availability in terms of content. And they said that the release date will be announced, quote-unquote, soon, but it's going to be very special end of the year that awaits on their boutique store, and the pre-order is getting nearer and nearer. So take that for what you will. Let's go to new editions, though. because we have a couple new editions. Supposedly, a new artwork edition of Mysterium is going to be released. The designer, the artist that did the remake, just announced it on social media that they tuned and spruced things up. I'm not really sure if there's any difference, though, at this point. But we are basically at the 10-year mark for this game. So I guess the revised edition is to some way celebrate that. Enhanced components, just what another retail game needs. Redesigned tray, because you know those are super helpful at retail. New cards, new updated subtle illustrations, smoother setup, improved gameplay flow. How much of that is just marketing jingo jargon? And how much of it is actually meaningful? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, but I mean, take that for what you will. I'm not really sure if there's anything to make of this, but the OP, who is, publishing and distributing Flip 7, kind of alluded to this teaser of a new Flip 7, but I think it was more in relationship to, again, giving it a special coat more than anything else, rather than actually giving us a new iteration than anything. So I guess I'll file that under, it wouldn't surprise me that you would try and ride this hype hot train and strike while the iron is hot, but it seems more like an aesthetic than anything else, if there is anything to believe in that regard in the first place. Wanted to give a little shout out as a side segue here. Small indie company, Midnight Market, is putting out a night in November, starting at midnight, right? I believe November 7, for a series of 5 indie games, only some of which are on Board Game Geek. Very limited copies, no press copies, boutique-style virtual market that, well, you can buy for 3 nights alone, and it's a platform over on Lunar Punk Games. And I guess this is, I think, the second one they've done of this. And one of them, called Pyrotechnics, actually looks like it could be relatively interesting. But tootin' and hollerin', Pyrotechnics, Duck Duck Choose, What Does My Rival Desire, What If I'm the Devil? And the other one is just actual scribble of a picture, but it's titled Error Message. So, I mean, again, it's under the radar indie and it's not crowdfunding. I thought I'd give it a shout out and highlight, if nothing else. The other tune-up that was just recently sort of broached and announced, as well as Allplay, is giving us a slightly revamped, but mostly, again, aesthetic upgrade for the Networks, with a new expansion that's going to be included with that. Prime Time is what it's going to be called, with the Megacorp expansion, which is adding a 3 modular situation: Executives, Moguls, and Teletime, which, again, is the same 3 modules that were previously in expansions as well, that appear to be separated out, that were put out in 2018. So it's gonna just kind of do relatively the same thing with a prettier aesthetic and a wider audience, kind of like their rebranding-ish Container in the same way. So they confirmed that substantially redeveloped, quote-unquote, per Joe Wiggins from Allplay on the forums. But what does that actually entail in terms of, if you like the gameplay, is it better, smoother, faster, easier in some of those ways? Or if you didn't like it, it's probably not going to change your mind. Well, it's probably the latter. But again, does this interest you? Steamforged. Speaking of anniversary editions, whoo dog, we're getting a new Terra Mystica. Getting the Awakened Realms special to a game, because if another game can be remade when it doesn't need to be remade, why not do it? That's what our hobby is about. I'm going to leave it alone there. Do you need not a big box, but a special edition? Because they actually, surprisingly, if you didn't realize this, already put out a big box of Terra Mystica. And obviously it's over on Gamefound and has nearly 15,000 people following it. Does Terra Mystica, just like Agricola, just like Puerto Rico, right? These more classical, drab Euro games, he said very lovingly, one of the best board games of all time. Does it need an aesthetic upgrade? And I guess, just like with Food Chain Magnet, I would make the argument with the very limited artwork that's on there right now. Do you consider this an upgrade or not? It's definitely a little bit more colorful palette, but is that always a good thing? I mean, Are you going to entice Siren Song-wise all of the Terra Mystica lovers? And I guess one of the questions about this is, again, that's not answered anywhere whatsoever at this point, is what else is going to be the enticing aspect of this? Is this just going to be a straight Arc Nova where you're just plastifying the hell out of this game? Yes, new artwork. Yes, wooden components. The most complete edition, though. All core, all expansion gameplay content. I mean, that's kind of the big box, I think, for the most part already. So why would you consider buying this for, I don't know, a second or third time if that's the incentive right now? Lacerda just teased. It was available as sort of the dig deep into random Lacerda game forum situations and find it out, but Resort is the next one, and there is no current timeline after the Great Library. So that's the big question is, does this really matter? I guess if you're a heavy Eurogamer, it's something to at least have on your radar. But as someone who is still wondering about details of the Great Library, and there's not any confirmed, aspect in that way as well, beyond the fact that it may be coming sometime in Q4. Speaking of the Gamefound feast at the beginning of the video, right? How many months or years in advance can you hype stuff up? Were you aware that Kinson Key Games, yes, that same Kinson Key Games that is currently and finally finishing their funding for the Galactic Cruise second Kickstarter, has another game that's sort of been lurking in the background, and I'm going to mispronounce this name, but we'll go with it. Manoomin is a competitive, strategic, quote-unquote Euro game where you take the role of a tribe that I'm not going to mispronounce, OJIBWE, to harvest and process Manoomin, the food that grows on water. Worker placement, hand management, multi-use cards, action selection system. Build the tools to harvest, collect it from around the lake, and learn the wisdom of the elders. 2 to 4 players, 1 to 2 hours. Okay. So just thought we'd throw that out there. It's getting a little bit more traction now that we're seeing sort of towards the end of the Galactic Cruise saga. Then just got an email talking about Thunderworks and their upcoming stuff, mostly for 2026, if you want any of their stuff on your radar. What do they have in store for us? Well, they have expansions for 2 of their bigger properties in the form of Stone Spine Architects and the Dawn of Ulos. So completely different realms of mechanical approach, but both getting add-ons at Kickstarter sometime next year. Then there is a Secret World of Ulos game in the final stages of development, they say, which is also going to be alongside another smaller, quote-unquote, literally, hopefully, World of Role Player game. But last but not least, and potentially even the most interesting to me as a side note here, Cartographers. Yeah, the roll and write, which was, I really like Cartographers. Coming back in Q3 of 2026. Something, again, quote unquote, big. How do you feel about that? Anyway, thought I'd just highlight that there as well. Then, did you hear that Aquatica also has a dueling game to add on all of the other dueling games that we have heard about, seen about, and been released already this year? Well, they're hitting the hotness as well. And you know what? I think I'm going to do a ranking of all those dueling games some point in the near future. But something like that, I can't buy it just to put it on the ranking list. So we'll just arbitrarily give it a random value and see if anyone notices. No one will notice anyway. Just kidding. No one watches this part of the video, so I can say whatever I want. I don't really understand why Bezier is doing this. I get it, but at the same time, right? Like Rebel Princess, their recently released asymmetric power-based version of Hearts, straight retail, right? And I think it's done relatively well. So if some is good, more is better. And they announced previously, and I covered this as when it came out, the Zombie Princess, which is kind of like the equivalent, I believe, of Spades with powers. It's fine, no big deal. Don't like Spades as much as I like Euchre or Hearts, but that's okay. But they're going to crowdfunding with it for a what? WTF. Anyway, we'll leave that alone right there. And then Kelp, Shark vs. Octopus. Yeah, you remember that one as well. Had just announced that they are coming back, Wonderboo Games, with a new offshore expansion. Now, that's offshore offspring expansion because, you know, sharks hunt as a pack and the octopuses evolve. But, you know, I worry about this because they are alluding, they're throwing in this word, and I'm kind of getting hung up on it, but then I'll just read you the description, right? And let you decide whether or not this is going to be actually that. The legacy awaits, right? With offspring in play, survival is no longer about a single predator or prey. It's about your legacy. And I think they're using that more as a, you know, obviously spawn generational term, not necessarily we use it in the hobby side of things, because it's going to offer you new strategies for both sides, giving you a magnetic modular block system, swappable tiles, as you're swapping around and protecting the octopus young, but then also controlling 2 new juvenile hunters on the shark side of things, giving you new powers, growth tiles as you hunt for a pack. Okay, so we'll see. And again, is it going to be one of those where it's going to overcomplicate, or is it going to be that I never play with outside of things? Similarly, they actually threw in there as a little bit of a teaser, Wonderbow did, that their other upcoming game is titled 8 Dragons, flying across the kingdoms, gathering treasures, form a legendary dragon swarm. That's what I think of when I think of dragons, right? The dragon swarm. But, I mean, you're on the hunt for gold, and your young dragons have hatched, so they join your swarm and try and help you out. But apparently you can call on villagers for help. Thought that'd be your food supply. Expand your lair, do quests. Get gold, get more gold, and get more gold. Now, again, quote unquote, take this for what you will, because I think this term has also lost a lot of meaning in our hobby over the last half decade. Innovative shared action selection meets puzzly tile laying. Okay, innovative. Better be innovative, though. Like, I'm all for calling your stuff different, but if you're going to put a word out there like that, like when I see unlimited replayability as a crowdfunding quote, truly unlimited. Anyway, plenty of interaction, minimal downtime. And it's got sort of the do stuff on other people's turn vibe, as they say, but does that interest you? So there you go. That's the news. That's what I got roundup-wise, and that's what's been on my radar. Let me know what you think. What did I miss? Let me know down below, and I'll hit it up next time. Peace out, stay classy. Thanks for watching.